So Barney Frank and Robert Reich got into a long argument on MSNBC about Bernie Sanders and the big banks and Dodd-Frank and Glass-Steagall. And I don't want to go into all of it here because it's a really long debate. You guys can go check it out. It was on Chris Hayes' show. But there's one moment that sticks out that really shows us Barney Frank's character. Let's watch.
No, I'm sorry that Mr. Reich is kind of, they're picking on poor Bernie, who has, of course, been hypercritical of others. And by the way, the thing that most bothered me in that interview and elsewhere in the campaign is of a kind of a McCarthyite suggestion that the reason big banks and other institutions haven't been criminally prosecuted is in part because people have taken financial contributions. And that, by the way, is an attack on President Obama. Let's be very clear. The Secretary of State does not get to indict people. So the complaint that there were not criminal prosecutions has literally zero to do with Secretary Clinton. It's an attack on President Obama. I wanted there to be more prosecutions. There were some policy choices I disagreed with. But Senator Sanders' consistent suggesting that somehow people were persuaded not to do that because of campaign contributions is, as I said, it's a kind of McCarthyism. It's an accusation without substance.
Okay. Understand exactly what he's saying there. He's saying when Bernie Sanders calls out money in politics, and he says that this is why politicians go soft on Wall Street, that's wrong, and that's McCarthyite of him to say, hey, I think money in politics gives undue influence to Wall Street, and they actually control the government. He has the line he always uses, that Congress doesn't regulate Wall Street regulates Congress. Barney Frank, somebody who's supposed to be a liberal Democrat, he was at McCarthyite for saying that. McCarthyite. So my audience, I'm sure, knows what McCarthyite is a reference to, but for those of you who don't know, they're talking about Joe McCarthy, who was number one in doing Red Scare bullshit. So when it was the Soviet Union versus America and it was the Cold War, this is the guy who's out there like, are you a communist? Okay, so you say you're not a communist, but have you ever met anybody who's a communist? Do you have friends who are communists? Let's have hearings to determine who's un-American and who's a bad person and who, possibly should be locked up or should have charges against them because they're not sufficiently on our side and they're communist. So this is a guy who was known for fear-mongering and lying. He's saying that when Bernie Sanders calls out the influence of big money in politics, that it's fear-mongering and lying. Oh, stop insulting our intelligence, Barney Frank. What a joke, what a joke, what a joke. Now, the truth is, Barney Frank is a Wall Street Democrat through and through, a sellout Democrat through and through, an establishment Democrat. And of course, he was instrumental in creating Dodd-Frank. His name is on it. This is the Wall Street reform package that happened after the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. Now, does Dodd-Frank do some good things? Sure. We've spoken about them before on the show. But the problem with Dodd-Frank is that there are massive loopholes in it that basically allow Wall Street to go back to doing many of the things they were doing beforehand, which ended up crashing the economy. So it's window dressing reform. It's reform in name, where the Democrats get to say, we did historic reform, but you don't fundamentally address the flaws in the system. For example, in Dodd-Frank, they didn't even bring back Glass-Steagall. The lack of Glass-Steagall is widely considered to help contribute to the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. So in trying to fix the problem, they didn't even bring that back. Why didn't they bring that back? Because it would have worked, because it would have actually done something. It would have cracked down on the bankers, and the bankers run Congress, so they didn't want that. So you have Barney Frank, who's taken a tremendous amount of money from Wall Street himself. He is a sellout, and now he's out there saying, oh, it's McCarthyite to say that money in politics influences us. No, you are living proof that it influences politicians. When all the evidence is in front of us, you still want to say, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. And guess what? There's going to be another giant crash soon because the banks are already bigger than they were when they needed to be broken up in '08 at their height. They're bigger than that. Now, his counter-argument is, yeah, but it's the indebtedness that matters. You got to regulate that. No, you have to regulate both, slapstick. You have to regulate the indebtedness and the amount of money they can leverage, That's one way to regulate it, and you also need to regulate the overall size, because when an institution gets too big, it threatens competition, and it threatens, honestly, capitalism, and it makes it so that it's too big to fail, and something that's too big to fail is too big to exist. So Barney Frank, dead wrong here in the conversation with Robert Reich, however the fuck you pronounce it, and the one who's McCarthyite, if it's anybody, is him.